All them stand up for the anthem. Thank you. You may kindly take your seats. Honorable Phil Danani Kereng, the Minister responsible for Environment and Tourism of the Republic of Botswana, who is standing in as the chair of this meeting since Comoros, their ministers could not make it to this meeting. And honorable ministers, your excellencies, ambassadors, distinguished delegates, would want to welcome you to this meeting, a high-level segment of the Conference on Biodiversity. And as you are all aware, biodiversity is quite critical for our continent, and following the global developments to make sure that our resources are safeguarded, we felt it would be important for us as a continent to be able also to move along by making sure that we work on our own strategy as well as action plan to domesticate those global frameworks so that they'll become relevant to our continent and take into consideration the realities that we face on a daily basis. And on that note, I would want to kindly invite the speakers, and the first one being Mr. Carlos Manuel Rodrigue. I apologize. My sincere apology. We'll start with a video message that's coming from the Cites Secretariat or Cites Secretary General, and that will be played, and after that we'll continue with the next one and proceed with the statements. It appears our technicians are not ready. In the interest of time, we'll be able to move to the next message, and that will come from OACPS Secretariat.
Honourable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the General of the Organisation of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, the OACPS, His Excellency Georges Rebelo Pinto Chikoti, I am honoured to be here today with you to make a few remarks at the opening of the high-level ministerial segment of this important Africa Conference on the implementation of the outcomes of the CBD Cop15 and Cites Cop19. Our biodiversity, which is the cornerstone of our existence, is unequivocally at a critical crossroads. The urgency of addressing biodiversity loss cannot be overstated. With the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, states parties have set for themselves ambitious targets that, if fully implemented, will usher in transformative changes to conserve, restore, and sustainably use biodiversity to meet our societal goals. Permit me, therefore, to recognise the commendable leadership and exemplary commitment of the African Union Commission for convening this conference just 6 months after the CBD Cop15 and Cites Cop19 to establish a solid strategic roadmap to galvanise member states' efforts and intent to fulfil the commitments made in 2023. The OACPS views this conference as a critical catalyst for summoning the collective efforts of the 79 members and regions of the OACPS to provide the requisite solutions to ensure our shared natural heritage thrives, for our health and well-being, for our livelihoods and economy, including for all our generations to come. To our minds, the three regions of the OACPS share common challenges and development needs, which calls for close collaboration and synergies to better advance the priorities and interests of members in various multilateral forums and to implement their related outcomes. There is great potential for amplifying Africa's voice in solidarity and unity with OACPS members from the Caribbean and Pacific regions. The OACPS is convinced that we will work and deliver more for our members states if we strengthened our structured intra-regional coordination and collaboration between the OACPS and the African Union, the Caribbean Community and the Pacific Islands Forum for negotiations and implementation of MEAs, with the AU, CARICOM and the Pacific Islands Forum coordinating efforts and initiatives at regional level. Please be assured of OACPS's ongoing commitment to work with our partners to see how the much needed additional resources could be recruited to support members and regional priorities. As many would be aware, the long-standing partnership with the European Union, spanning more than 4.5 decades, has been instrumental in providing targeted development and capacity building initiatives to reinforce the sustainable use and conservation of biodiversity. For example, the current portfolio of intra-ACP programs under the 11th EDF and final cycle of the EDF includes the ACP MEA 3, the Sustainable Wildlife Management, and the BioPalma 2 programs. In closing, let me extend our heartfelt appreciation to our hosts, the African Union Commission, for the warm welcome and for generously extending their facilities to all of us over the last week. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, and I have now the honor to invite the Honorable Minister Kereng of the Republic of Botswana to take over now the proceedings. Thank you very much.
And welcome all of you. A very good morning, and I wish us a very successful meeting. I'm going to continue with the program, and right now give the floor for the statement to His Excellency. Is it his or her? His Excellency Hans Lundqvist, the Ambassador and Head of EU Delegation to the African Union. You have your floor.
Thank you, Chairperson, Commissioner, Ministers, Excellencies, dear delegates. I trust these has been productive days in identifying priority actions jointly by member states, the RECs, African Union Commission and partners to implement the Cites Cop19, CBD Cop15, Convention on Biological Diversity, the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands and adoption of the Ocean Treaty. The loss of biodiversity must come a serious concern for every government and stakeholder globally, because protecting biodiversity is about sustaining present gains and development for humanity, but also to safeguarding the development needs for future generations. When we erode biodiversity, we impact food, water, forest, and livelihoods. Climate change threats biodiversity, and if we want to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the Agenda 2063, we must safeguard biodiversity, but also safeguard the local communities. Communities depend on the forest, land, and oceans for their livelihoods. It's about the biosphere, the society, the economy, where the biosphere is critical. Africa is blessed. It's home to 1/4 of the world's mammal species and 1/5 of the world's species. It hosts the second biggest rainforest in the world, one of the green lungs on the earth. And it's an asset we have to take care of. It's also an asset of economic terms. Conserving Africa's biodiversity is vital for the continent's long-term economic development. And Sweden is committed to contribute through support to our partners. We support the continent on biodiversity and climate change adaptation and mitigation, on blue economy, on sustainable forest management, on transborder water, on fossil-free energy and green jobs, and fight illegal wildlife trade, to mention some. However, it's the people, the communities, that can make a change. And we need to identify good examples as community-based natural resource management. We need to identify synergies and complementary in financing, and not at least inviting the private sector to take its share in implementing national biodiversity strategies and action plans. But a plan or a strategy must be realized to have an impact. Nature is our life support system, a system to take care of. And Sweden is proud to contribute to this conference to take actions for future generations by the frameworks on biodiversity and by supporting African partners in their task on oceans, forestry, and landscapes. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
I thank you very much, Your Excellency. I will now give the floor to Her Excellency Birgit Markussen, Ambassador and Head of EU Delegation to the African Union. Madam, you have the floor.
Very much for having this opportunity this morning. I would like to, of course, Commissioner Muchanga, acknowledge you are here, also Chair, the Minister from Botswana, and honorable ministers in the room, ambassadors, colleagues who are here, esteemed partners, representatives of the civil society, and also all the ladies and good gentlemen who are here. It's my great honor today to represent the European Union at this important event. And I would like to acknowledge and appreciate the African Union Commission for convening this meeting and raising biodiversity high on the political agenda. This represents another important milestone in our overall AU-EU partnership, helping us to deliver on joint global commitments. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to make 3 points and a one-liner. I would like you to, as one-liner, I would like to stick for this meeting and for today, which is really, I want to underline, we need to move from a do no harm towards do more good approach. And I think you'll hear me say that a few times in my little intervention here. My first point, the EU welcomes the Convention on Biological Diversity, Cop15, historic deal for nature. The coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The framework is a breakthrough for biodiversity conservation and restoration, and its suitable use complementing efforts under the other conventions, such as the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. Implementing the global biodiversity framework is a priority for the European Union, which has pledged to double our international biodiversity finance, reaching 7 billion euros from 2021 to 2027. This will allow us, all of us in this room and beyond, to support our partners in implementing the global biodiversity framework, for example, through capacity building and knowledge and the development of programs to directly protect, restore, and sustainably use of the nature. My second point, because we are already delivering. For example, Nature Africa is a global gateway and Team Europe flagship initiative to preserve biodiversity while creating better living conditions for the local populations, covering 44 sub-Saharan countries with 1.5 billion euro. We also have the global biodiversity framework that complements the Paris Agreement, and both must be addressed at the same political level and implemented urgently and fully. We're also working on effective, full, and swift implementation of the global biodiversity framework because it's urgent. It requires active engagement of all governments, all society, and all economies, mobilization of resources from all sources and from all leaderships. In this respect, the European Union is, on the basis of its Green Deal and biodiversity strategy for 2030, currently assessing to what degree its goals and targets are aligned to exactly the global biodiversity framework and how to address the gaps, if any, in view of communicating the global biological diversity and demonstrating progress exactly at the next Convention on Biological Diversity in 2024. All parties are expected to do the same, all of us in this room, everyone engaged in this. My third and last point. So action is needed at all levels, national, regional, and continental. The African Union has a key role to play on the continent, strengthening coordination and increasing impetus to deliver. In this context, the AU biodiversity strategy under preparation has the potential to accelerate implementation. The EU stands ready to continue our cooperation with the African Union and African partners to align policies and actions with the global biodiversity objectives. As I said first, here's the one-liner. We need to move from a do no harm approach towards a do more good approach. ODA will not be enough. The European Union is committed to step up finance from all sources, helping partners to implement their national biodiversity finance plans, and also working with multilateral development banks and the private sector to achieve the financial targets of the global biodiversity framework. I now wish to conclude by thanking you all for your engagements to transform our economies and societies towards a nature positive and inclusive future, because we have to move from a do no harm approach to a do more good approach. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I'm informed that the video for CBD Secretariat is ready. I'll give chance for the playing of the video. I think we have a network issue. I can continue. Maybe we can continue as the network is still being sorted. We're hoping that we won't have much of this technical problem today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm informed of a request that I have acceded to of Ambassador from UK to the UK Ambassador and Deputy Permanent Representative to the AU, who is in the agenda at the closing remarks, the closing session, requesting that they give their statement now because they have an engagement soon after this session. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you agree with me that I can give them chance for them to give their statement. I thank you very much, Ambassador. The floor is yours.
Good morning, colleagues. Distinguished Minister, my friend Commissioner Albert Muchanga from the AU Commission. I stand here humbly as the third speaker from the Global North at a conference for the Global South, so my apologies and thanks for allowing me to speak today. Colleagues, I'm delighted to see the African Union Commission bring its member states and international experts here together to discuss the important issue of biodiversity. I started my career in government as a negotiator on the CBD. So coming to this event today feels somewhat like a homecoming for me. I haven't seen any familiar faces, which perhaps indicates my age more than anything. But I'm delighted to be here to support the work you are doing. And I want to thank the African Union Commission for taking the time to bring your member states together to talk about implementation. African countries have a huge wealth of biodiversity, natural capital that has the potential to support sustainable development and economic growth, as well as Agenda 2063. I am a huge supporter of the spirit of this year's International Biodiversity Day, which talks about moving from commitments to action. The UK is very proud to have played an important role supporting biodiversity through our work at the Glasgow Climate Change COP. Notably, the commitments made to protect our forests, an important sink of rich biodiversity and of carbon. Efforts to tackle climate change need to go hand in hand with efforts to tackle biodiversity loss. I am also delighted that the AU chair this year, the island of Comoros, will shortly host a conference dedicated to the blue economy in small island developing states. As chair of the Global Oceans Alliance, we could not be more supportive of their objectives and look forward to attending. One of the other jobs I did early in my career was support for a UK initiative called the Darwin Initiative, which some of you may know about, I hope so. It is an initiative that supports grassroots organizations to address biodiversity loss across the world, but we have a wonderful history in Africa. The diversity of our support reflects the diversity of Africa's biodiversity and your beautiful continent. We've also run projects across all 5 of the AU's region. Projects on sea cucumbers in Egypt, projects to protect Liberia's forests, projects to harness the biodiversity for medicine in the Seychelles, and a project to support access and benefit sharing in Namibia. We have also been long-time supporters of the AU's Green Recovery Action Plan. and biodiversity sits at the heart of this. The focus on biodiversity through sustainable land management, forestry, oceans, and tourism offer an opportunity to bring together and enhance our collective effort. The UK will continue to support the African Union and its member states on the implementation of the green economy, the Green Recovery Action Plan, and bring about sustainable and resilient futures for us all. That's enough from me. Good luck with the rest of your conference. My sincere support and congratulations for your efforts here today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I'll give the floor for an opening statement by His Excellency Ambassador Albert Muchanga, the Commissioner for Economic Development, Trade, Tourism, Industry and Mining at the African Union Commission. Sir, you have the floor.
And I would like to begin my statement by saluting all the ministers here, all the ambassadors, heads of missions, the senior officials, as well as our colleagues in the African Union Commission. And I can see that this is a full meeting. It's very, very encouraging. It means you came here to do business. And we look forward to very significant outcomes of your deliberations. Having said this, let me indicate that we started late, and I apologize. And for the ambassador here of the European Union, we have tried it twice to play the video. I'm wondering if it's not doing no harm, or it's going to do more good. We are yet to see. On a substantive note, let me indicate that as a continent, we are known to be a champion of biodiversity conservation. Biodiversity is an integral part of our livelihoods, and we draw from it resources for medicines, for food, and other raw materials which we use in our socio-economic development processes. In this connection, conserving biodiversity for Africa should not be an option, but rather a vital necessity. As Commissioner responsible for trade, tourism, industries, among other activities, I have no doubt that sustainable management and utilization of biodiversity in Africa will go a long way in accelerating inclusive economic growth and sustainable development across our continent. This will take us a step further to the realization of the seventh goal of our Agenda 2063. And it reads as follows, and I quote, "Environmentally sustainable and climate resilient economies and communities," end of quote. The relevance of this conference to the biodiversity agenda of our continent cannot be overemphasized. Its outcomes tend to strengthen ongoing efforts in our continent to protect its rich biodiversity and diverse ecosystems, and this will be for the well-being of our people. Furthermore, it has provided an opportunity for defining ways and mechanisms to domesticate the global frameworks and resolutions taking into consideration the realities of Africa. As always, I'm advised, Africa is ahead in translating these recent frameworks and decisions into actions. We should commend ourselves for this bold step accomplished by 2022. The draft African Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan is our new vehicle for addressing the triple crisis of biodiversity losses, adverse impacts of climate change, and disasters in ecosystem resilience. It is thus a significant contribution to ensuring a coordinated approach in the implementation of biodiversity actions across the continent and to strengthening the efforts by member states. Therefore, an urgent need arises for us to step up ambition across the continent in implementing policies as well as putting in place sustainable practices that will halt the loss of Africa's biodiversity. In so doing, we shall reduce the threats to ecosystems from climate change and other adverse factors. Achieving this goal calls for a wide range of interdependent processes. This includes sustainable use of biological resources, increasing efforts in conservation and restoration of degraded ecosystems, enhancing inclusion, especially of vulnerable groups, equity and fairness in sharing the benefits from biological and genetic resources, and this includes traditional knowledge and digital sequence information. Integrating ecosystem-based approaches into all development sectors, raising awareness on the values of biodiversity and its contribution to people, and monitoring an increased flow of finance from all sources to Africa's biodiversity. These elements I've read above are key pillars for sustainability in Africa's development. It is our collective duty to take effective actions to translate these aspirations into concrete results that benefit across Africa. One of the fundamental principles for success in the green transition is global solidarity and partnership. Africa is not an island, and the benefits of biodiversity conservation in Africa are of a global nature. Therefore, I would like to call upon our partners present in this auditorium to join us in the implementation of the African Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan for the benefit of humanity and our physical environment. Let me also take this opportunity to recognize the financial support that has made this conference a reality from Sweden, the European Union, and OACPS. In addition, I would also like to express our gratitude to partners who support us technically and logistically. These include UNECA, Traffic, WWF, GIZ, FAO, UNEP, the Cites, and CBD secretaries. I'm advised that all of you are aware of these acronyms, so you know what I'm talking about. I also like to thank all the other partners who provided technical and financial support for the successful organization of this conference. And finally, special thanks to all the experts from the member states of the African Union and the staff of the African Union Commission who worked very tirelessly and diligently to ensure that this meeting convenes. With these few remarks made on behalf of my sister, the Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Development, Ambassador Sako, I officially open this meeting and wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'll give myself the floor to give official opening statement. The privilege of chairing, you give yourself some portion as well, so you are not left behind. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you once again for this opportunity to chair this meeting, and I would like to recognize and acknowledge Ambassador Albert Muchanga, Commissioner for Economic Development, Trade, Tourism, and Mining of the African Union Commission, let me follow protocol, observe it and respect it, and request that I recognize you, fellow ministers, and welcome you in a very special way, my colleagues, and also recognize all of you, Excellency ambassadors, for your presence and for the statements you've already made. And I also would like to recognize the representation or the participation of representatives of our technical partners, our supporters across board, civil society organizations, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, all protocol observed. A very good morning to you all. Good morning. In Africa, we have this spirit of joy, so I don't want tension because you must encourage me from the floor so that we can have a very successful meeting. Good morning. Good morning. Hi, yes, now we are there. I have the honor to officiate at this August occasion on the translation of the outcomes of the CBD Cop15 and the Cites Cop19 into actions to be implemented by our representative states. Honorable ministers, colleagues, participants, I'm aware that we have very busy schedules and yet you prioritized coming to Ethiopia, to Addis, to attend this important meeting. And it is just a demonstration and a clear testimony of the value that you attach to this subject. It is important for us to acknowledge the ability to attend because there's always so many competing priorities that need us to attend. Biodiversity is of great significance to our cultural heritage as Africans and is a cornerstone of our economies. Losing biodiversity threatens our existence and civilization and progress and livelihoods. As a continent, this is a risk that we cannot afford to take, and as we are all aware, the environment has its own harsh way of responding to abusive actions of humans and other actors. It is a fact that Africa is endowed with vast natural wealth and cultural heritage intricately connected to its ecosystems. Statistically, we are aware that Africa has about 50,000 to 73,000 plants, 1,100 mammals, an estimated 3,000 to 5,500 freshwater fish, 2,100 reptiles, talk less of the hundreds of thousands of elephants and other animal species. Despite this natural capital endowment, ladies and gentlemen, the continent is not immune to the threats posed by the erosion of biodiversity. The impacts of climate change and the emergence of global health crisis. It is estimated that if we continue on the current trend, and part of it being if we continue not making enough progress with our meetings and our dialogues and our program deliveries, we risk to lose about 50% of the bird and mammal species by 2100, the year 2100, and about 20 to 30% of the productivity of our lakes, and mainly due to pollution, habitat fragmentation, and other anthropogenic activities. And that will mean that poverty and lives will be at threat. Lives will be at threat because of persistent poverty. Honorable ministers, distinguished participants, as leaders charged with the responsibility of taking care of biodiversity, we have a duty to ensure that we preserve their benefits for future generations. This will involve a multifaceted and multi-stakeholder approach. It should also cover transboundary efforts, including at continental, sub-regional levels as well. Furthermore, we need to harness the collective strength of our commitment to speak as one. We always talk about one Africa voice, but here I wish that we can be able to put more attention onto how we can actually effectively build this voice as a process. By unifying our voice, we can advocate for the necessary actions to safeguard our environment, mitigate adverse impacts on the environment, and attain our collective goals on the global arena. We want to take Africa to the world as a unified, very progressive continent. So our unity will lend weight to our actions and ensure that the concerns and priorities of Africa are given the attention they deserve, both at home, within the continent, and also in the global space. As we confront these shared challenges, colleagues, we must focus on the areas where we can achieve the greatest impact and create tangible change that can also be sustained over generations. Let us forge a common Africa agenda that highlights our mutual priorities and aspirations and deliver transformational outcomes. I'm looking at you down there and I'm thinking I am here with people who are going to apply new minds to the approaches that we use so that we can transform, our way of business, and we can stop doing business as usual and make sure that this meeting will stand out as one that brought about the beginning of change. Honorable Ministers, distinguished participants, during the past 3 days, our experts have worked on a draft African Union strategy and action plan that encompasses, amongst other priorities, the engagement of indigenous people and local communities, the promotion of sustainable livelihoods, the imperatives of sustainable utilization, the pressing matter of zoonotic diseases, and the critical importance of adopting a comprehensive One Health approach. These topics represent significant challenges and opportunities and require us to apply new minds, processes, and a better way of engagement. Opportunities for our continent, and it is essential that we tackle them head on with a strategic and coordinated efforts. And for this to take root, we must put on a sustainability path a whole of society and whole of government approach. It's going to be essential for us to have that focus, also leveraging better on the support system that is offered by our partners and all. Our officials also had an opportunity to deliberate on the outcomes of CBD Cop15 and Cites Cop19, and to develop action plans to ensure implementation of decisions most relevant to Africa. At this juncture, allow me to reflect on the divergent manner in which we approached our preparation for the two COPs, and to mention that the CBD preparations were characterized by a general unity of purpose, resulting in a more coherent African approach to the numerous issues of the CBD agenda. However, on the contrary, the discussions around Cites meeting were unfortunately not following a similar approach ahead of Cites meetings, or after, before. Let me read again. We unfortunately with Cites, because Cites is not an easy body too. Unfortunately, with Cites, there was a difficulty in following a similar approach that gave seamless and unity in the decisions. As a consequence, Cites Cop19, at Cites Cop19 in Panama, we were unable to coherently articulate common positions on key issues such as sustainable utilization, community livelihoods, disposal of stockpiles, and resource mobilization, among others, despite our largely agreement on these concepts within the CBD context and agenda. This difference in approach is highly regrettable, ladies and gentlemen, and I trust you will all agree with me that going forward to Cites Cop20 and CBD Cop16, Africa must and should speak with one voice. You must use this opportunity today to chart the way forward in terms of how this strong voice can actually be supported to grow. This single African voice is crucial at a time when we are recovering from COVID-19 pandemic, and there is urgent need for sustainable financing for development of our people and the conservation of our natural resources. I trust that honorable ministers present here will help champion a single African voice at the next Cites and CBD COPs, and that where states may have different points of views, as ministers we will take accountability for ensuring that differences are reconciled before we go to the COPs. So what happens between the COPs is very, very critical. Even as we can reflect on the preparations for this meeting, we can see the need for us to engage more, between these important conventions. This would ensure that we do not have a repeat of Cites Cop19, where African states, member states, where I would use the word boldly, fighting amongst themselves in the presence of other nations from the rest of the world. I want to bring it as a challenge because I believe that this meeting will help us to heal these cracks. Honorable ministers, distinguished participants, let me submit to you that as a continent, we have excellent policy frameworks, legal instruments as well, beautiful programs. And we know how to develop such magnificent instruments, but however, our greatest enemy is our inability to translate them into actions that have impact, that bring change, that bring benefits, and that can be sustained over time. It is therefore my hope that we shall all commit to ensure that African Union biodiversity strategy and action plan will be different. To achieve effective implementation, we must commit domestic resources and blend them with the support from international community. The commitments made during this meeting require technical, financial, and other resources to turn them into reality. And moreover, it requires you and I to apply our renewed minds to it. Therefore, I urge our strategic partners present here and the relevant convention secretariats, as well as technical collaborators, to join forces in supporting the finalization and implementation of the strategy and action plan we are going to consider today. On this note, as I close, please allow me to acknowledge the generous financial support provided by the Kingdom of Sweden through its support to Pillar 3 of the Green Recovery Action Plan, the biodiversity and nature-based solutions, as well as additional funding support from the European Union, the OACPs, and furthermore, I would like to thank the Secretariat of the relevant conventions, being Cites, CMS. I want to also assume that we know what this stands for, CBD, and the relevant UN and international organizations, including UNACA, UNDP, UNEP, FAO, and experts from non-state actors such as Traffic, WWF, GIZ, Kodua East Africa, and ABS Initiative for their technical support to organizing this conference. I will fail in my duty if I do not acknowledge the African Union Commission, and thank you, sir, for the statement you've just made, and in particular, the Directorate of Sustainable Environment and Blue Economy for organizing this expectedly very successful conference. Ladies and gentlemen, let us seize this moment as leaders and as stewards of our continent to rise above the challenge, to map our way for a different pathway that is going to give us the best results that we anticipate from ourselves and to Africa and to the world, and work collectively towards a prosperous and sustainable future for Africa. Long live Africa, Africa's biodiversity. Long live us in leadership. And I thank you very much. I declare this conference officially opened. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I would like to take you to the next segment where we are going to collectively adopt the agenda. We have the agenda before us, and I would like to have it presented, if it's possible, technology. I hope everybody has a copy of the agenda.